Okay, so here we are again. It's a Sunday morning. It looks like it's May 1st today. We are going to do something a little different this week. We're going to talk about astrology, and the reason being that you hear us, in fact, there's a comment on our website now, and I'm going to read what it says. It'll lay down a little bit of a foundation. Every now and then you will hear the words charts and transits during our taped discussions. Charts refer to an astrology chart, and transits refer to the detailed plan of action provided to accomplish the designated goals set for this incarnation. When a soul indicates it's time for incarnation, there's many factors to consider: past lives, mental conditions, emotional relationships, temperament, and more. All these factors into the time, place, and a date when an infant will draw its first breath and place itself on record as having logged in on this planet Earth. An astrology chart and a plan of action quickly follow. So when you take that first breath and that prana comes in, it activates and brings life into that body, the little baby's infant body, so to speak. That also sets the timing of the chart, and then obviously the chart and a plan of action quickly follow, because once you have the time, date, and place, it's set. So the diagrams we call astrology charts, and the plan of action we call the transits. The word transit refers to the detailed activity plan spanning the lifetime contained within the chart and indicate moments of opportunity, change, transformation, growth, and development. Hence, the universe, neither capricious nor wasteful, provides each new birth with a manual, a mini purpose and plan, designated to contain everything needed to help each incarnation succeed in its objective. And of course, I'm using the term purpose and plan on a mini version down here, but all of the DK material talks about the purpose and the plan of the planet, and that the consciousness as it evolves works more and more with trying to figure out what the purpose and the plan for the planet is. Those that are much higher up on the chart than we are, out of the lower three dimensions, and are now working in the spiritual triad. So when I said mini purpose and plan, I mean, here we are, we're practicing again. We're meant to learn how to handle something like this and then interact with it. And by that, I mean, you handle your incarnation, and then you learn to interact with your transits as they come along, because they're designed to enhance your own personal development. And then I have a note here: every member of the group seen on these videos has had an astrology chart reading and are actively following their transits. And the readings were all done prior to their joining this group. And that really, I have that perspective because I'm the one who did the readings. But so I can see how each individual had changes and what transpired. And it was to some degree similar for everybody. Life got better. Boy, we've rendered somebody over there just speechless. I also want to indicate how this whole group, I don't know if you all know how this whole group started to where we are now. And that was because a mutual friend of Bull and myself, unbeknownst, I didn't know him, he didn't know me. But we have a friend, Craig, and he had gifted Bull with a chart reading. So I think this is what started it all, right, Bull?
Yep, that's right. I was up there just for, you know, like a routine visit, and we started talking about things, and, you know, I'm like, oh, he likes the same kind of stuff I do. And he's, you know, so he had shared with me, he goes, oh yeah, he said, I know this lady Carla, and you know, like, he used to date her daughter, she used, you know, and she's been doing my chart. So he pulled his chart out and, you know, showed me that, kind of explained what was going on. And I'm like, oh man, that's really cool. So he goes, yeah, if you're interested, I'll put you in touch with her and all the other stuff. And kind of the rest is history. Because after I got that, and I called up some of my other, you know, all some of the old military brothers, like with Donnie and Franco, and, you know, and then talking to Linda and stuff, and they're like, wow, man, that's super, super cool. Because, you know, like, we'll read a lot of, you know, like, you know, stuff on, you know, different esoteric stuff, whatever. Didn't really have a clear, you know, guide, just kind of, you know, shotgun pattern, just anything that was kind of interesting. But then kind of narrowed it down. And I, you know, like, after I got with Carla, I'm like, oh man, I'm reading this book called Twin Dimensions. I'm reading this, you know, book about, you know, consciousness, everything else like that. And it just kind of, you know, struck a chord, you know, especially with Donnie. He would, you know, pass through about every other month, you know, like at that time for work and travel and stuff. And so we would, you know, sit over at another one of our friends' house, and we would all talk about this stuff. And we're just like, whoa, this is super cool. And so then, you know, one thing led to another, you know, like Donnie got one. I think Franco was next. And it just kind of from there spread out to our little group that we have now. And so there's about 10 or 15 of us that are, you know, all kind of on the same journey, the same path.
Yeah. So when the website came out, then I sent the website to Craig, and I said,
Mm-hmm.
you are really the genesis of this. You know, here is where it has gone to. His text back to me was outstanding. He said, the information can empower people. I've had the advantage of knowing you for years, but this knowledge, if applied to one's life, this is knowledge if applied to one's life. Glad you are in contact with these guys. They're good people. I hope they spread the word far and wide. So it was nice, I think, for him to know that too, because like I said, I've been doing his chart for at least 20 years. And so that means the transits every year. So he always has some idea of where he's at in his personal growth and development and what is coming along. And so he just, you know, to me, when you walk out the door after with this knowledge, kind of being aware of it, you're just a little more stable, a little more grounded, so to speak. You have some sense of where you're going, and you have a better sense of who's walking out the door. You know yourself better. And so that's how all of this originally started. And so comments, Donnie? I think you had told me that Bull had said, gee, you better talk to this lady.
Yeah, I sure did. Yeah. I don't know how much to say about that. Because I had plans on getting into it with another group, and I knew down the road I would eventually get to that. And he said, look, you need to talk to Carla. I said, I'm not kidding. I said, all right then. You know, he said, I think she can. He said, I think she can help. You know, make, you know, some things clear. And I said, okay then. And you know, for me, I didn't have to wait to go to that other stuff. So, and I'm impulsive and have no patience. So I was like, okay, well, that sounds good. You know, here we are.
Yeah, and it seems to me looking from the outside on all of this, that more often than not, well, first of all, life settles in a little bit, become more to grips with your own life and who you are. And then that reflects on your relationships with the people around you. Tom, you can comment to that one.
All right. I'm sorry. What was that again, Carla?
What I was saying was that I think you could speak to the fact that once you have that information, it interacts with you and then spreads out to the people around you in terms of your interactions and comfortability with life. And
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's almost like I don't even really feel like I'm putting forth much effort to do that either. I just walk around and say hello to people. But as far as, my chart goes, I had never done anything like that before. And Donnie kind of made the connection to you when I reconnected with Donnie. And then for me, at first it was like, you gave me my aspects and first set of transits, and I was just like blown away because those aspects read me like a book. And then as the transit started, for me, it was like kind of an awakening moment. It's just like, oh, okay, that's what that was. And now it's more like it gives me this roadmap is the way I look at it, and kind of how I can push forward and try to not put too much effort into anticipate what's coming, but just kind of ready myself for it. And when it comes, deal with it a lot more effectively than I probably used to, because I have some sense of what's going on and why it's happening. So yeah, and then just passing that positivity any way that I can when I approach people now, as opposed to the old me that would just kind of walk by people with my head down because I just didn't want to be bothered. So it's been a lot of changing factors that have come my way because of it. So it's good.
I'm assuming those were positive changing factors.
Oh, absolutely.
Is what you're implying.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Even if when a transit hits and it brings something that might be perceived as negative, I look at it completely different now, because for me it's just, yeah, it might have what feels like a negative impact at first, but it's a growth. It's something that enables me to grow, and how to kind of manage through different scenarios, different complexities that life throws at you. So now it's just like I just kind of push forward as positively as possible, and knowing that whatever comes my way, it's just the way it's going to be, and I gotta deal with it and roll with it. So nothing but positive, even when the negative stuff hits. It's just like, okay, this is it, time to deal with it.
Yeah. So if I backtrack for a minute now, aspects, when we talk about it, is with a chart. I'm debating whether to have Donnie put that chart up now or later. And maybe we should, let me just go through this from the beginning. Donnie, give me just that one sheet of numbers. And nobody's going to be able to read these numbers. Don't worry about it. It's just the impress. Okay. As an astrologer, I work with a piece of paper like this, and this happens to be a date of September. What is that? 1960? Yeah, I think it is. That book was split in half because I've been using it for a lot of years, and it was big, and it's my old one, so I could take a photograph of it easier, just simply because when I opened the book, it just fell flat open. I didn't have to hold it open. So what that particular set of numbers is on any given day is it's going to tell me where every planet, including the sun and the moon, are placed in what sign, in what degree. So in other words, if you went to Palomar Observatory over here and you said, okay, well, where am I going to find Mars? in the heavens right now. All of that is mapped. They might say, I can't read that, nor do I want to be able to read it. I'm going to just make up a number. They're going to say, well, you need to look in the constellation of Leo at 5 degrees, 38 minutes and 15 seconds. And so if they move their telescope to see that particular location in the heavens, that is where they would find Mars. And so that's all that sheet is. But that sheet, if you went all the way across it, it deals with one day. In this case, it's probably got two timings. So it's got what is what we used to call GMT, Greenwich Mean Time. I think might call it Universal Time or something now, at noon and at midnight. The moon is the only one that moves fast enough, so they have 2 placements. Otherwise, I can take a look at one of those lines, I can read across it, and I can pretty much tell you the personality profile of people who are going to be born on that day. Just simply because we're dealing with math and science. We are dealing with numbers. We are dealing with what ends up being a triple matrix, in as much as you need the time, the date, and the place to put together an astrology chart. And then we've placed it in a circle. And Donnie, do you have that one to come up now? Okay. And we've got the microphone on, right? I
Yes.
can't. Okay, I just want to be sure. So this, like, what did Donnie say he was? Not spontaneous, what did he say? Well, whatever it is.
Impulsive and impatient.
Yeah, okay. So in his impulsiveness and so on and so forth, one day he evidently put this together because he sent me a link and said, oh, look what I have. You know, glitz and glamour here in this chart. So this is his astrology chart. And what happens is, for an individual, if you look to the very, very center of this circle, that would be the placement of Donnie on the planet, wherever he was born. Okay. And so when you look over to where it says 1 and 12, the line that's right across the middle, that would be the eastern horizon, and the other one coming on the other side where you got all those planets, that would be the western horizon. And so it's a horizon line. That's why if anybody ever asks you what your rising sign is, they're just asking what was the constellation that was rising on the eastern horizon at the time you're born. I'm sure most people who ever ask what's your rising sign don't know what they're asking, other than they want to know what constellation sign was there. Then all of the planets, this is a map of where they all were at the time that Donnie was born. Nowadays, I used to, when I started, have to compute all of this by hand because we didn't have computers yet. Now you can just go online and compute where everything is very quickly with the press, put in the 3 pieces of information, press the button, and all of the work is done for you. But I used to have to do the hand math on all of this for every chart originally. So what occurs is now, as an astrologer, when I look at where everything is here, I start looking at it from a geometrical focus. I'm looking at the geometry of the relationships of all of those planets to each other. Predominantly, I look for a conjunction, which means 2 of them are close together, or I'm looking for a 90-degree angle, or I'm looking for a 180-degree angle, which makes them opposite. So I'm looking for the most part for the relationships, what we call hard aspects. This is where your action's going to be in a given life. Okay. And then the 12 divisions, those lines that divide that circle up, represent the basic life patterns of humans. So when I say that, the first one on that eastern horizon, that is the individual and how who we're going to see when we first meet this person. Whatever is on that horizon is what they're going to be experiencing first. A little like a theater marquee. You know, you get the name of the movie. Now, it doesn't mean the name of the movie has anything to do with the movie. It's just the theater marquee. And sometimes with an individual, you meet them and you get to know them later, and there's all these other parts of them that you never saw, and you wonder, where did they come from? Well, there's a lot of times whatever the pattern internally is does not necessarily reflect the title on the theater marquee, so to speak. So, and the second house is your money, your morals, your ethics. The next little division is your neighborhood you grew up, your everyday conversation, your neighborhood friends or brothers and sisters you had around. The next house is where you grew up, your home, your mother. Then pretty soon you get to your own creativity, your work, your health. That's the bottom half. The top half is, and that's the individual development before you have to deal with other people. That house over there, when we start moving up again, that's got so many planets in it, is other people. And then other people's money or government money, collected groups, insurance money, inheritance, so on and so forth. Moving further up towards the top, now this is when you get religion. Is there foreign countries and other cultures and philosophy of life? Happens to be education, higher education, like a college education, if you have one, would be reflected up there. And when you get to the very top, we're now looking at how the world sees you and probably how you're going to go out and be reflected in a career. And friends comes over there with those two little sets of jagged lines. And then there's one sector that's hidden from most people except the individual. And that's just the very private life that doesn't really show up out in the world. So an astrologer will look that way, and then he starts to look at the relationships, the geometrical relationships, to see where the majority of the energy and action is going to be placed. If we look in this chart, guess what? See that house over there with all of that activity? That's where this person's going to put the majority of their effort, and that is in the house of other people or partnerships. So, and the Mercury's there, which is your mind, but it's also your mouth. So you would expect that he's going to talk to lots of people. He's going to have relationships that are partnerships, but they also most likely are going to include financial interaction. It's just all there. Let me see. When we start to look in oppose, we look to see what opposes. Most of his life is just going to be out there talking to everybody. He doesn't stir the pot that much anywhere else in his life. He can probably stir a pretty good pot out there with people. Money. And government, probably going to get a lot of his money from the government in his lifetime. And so it comes from the government and drops over into his bank account. So questions, guys? Well, I got this up there. Can anybody hear me?
Oh, yeah, we hear you.
Those other two people don't want to ask questions.
I'm just absorbing.
You're living it. You've already absorbed
I
it.
am. It's amazing. Yeah.
But the interesting thing is, now this is the personality profile. In other words, when the soul decides it's going to incarnate, it has to have a vehicle to do it with. And the vehicle is what we call people down here. You know, 2 arms, 2 legs, a torso, and a head. But there has to be some degree of uniformity for all people so they can interact. So that, and so these charts, you got 12 signs, you've got 12 sectors of a house, which are pretty common to everybody in society, falls in those realms somewhere. Because if you didn't have that, and you didn't have some degree of basis for the level of interaction with everybody, you would be looking at something like the first Star Wars, when they had the bar scene. And I mean, that was the first time we ever saw something like that, where you had all these different creatures from all these different planetary areas that were all different. And you looked and you can't, you know, it's like, how are they all going to interact? Where we have a basis here, so that the expectation on this planet, most humans for the most part all look the same in terms of their body structure, their body type. Granted, we have different languages, but we still have the same basic principles. We still function with families. We have children. There's marriages or partnerships, however you want to look at them. People go to work. They have friends. So we have a functioning degree of commonality because everybody's got one of these. Okay. And it works with the same set of planets, because we're dealing with the planets in this solar system as the reflections. So this becomes the personality that you run around and interact with humanity with. And everybody's got one of those too. That's what the aspects are in terms of, so we look at this, and this is what's coming. This is what's coming out of this guy. This is how he's going to express. This is where he's going to go. These are the dynamics. So questions, because I'm not sure. I mean, I'm doing a real fast rundown here. So ask some questions you think anybody out there in the audience, whoever watches this, would ask.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Can these ever change?
Do they? Is that the question?
Yeah. Is it? Does it
No,
stay
this is a
constant?
photo shot. This is a still photo shot of exactly where everything was in the heavens at the time you were born. This is your chart. It does not change in terms of, none of these move around. It's the base from which you work in terms of your personality. Now, you're going to have growth and development, don't get me wrong, but this is the foundation, and this does not change during the course of your lifetime. Is that the question you asked?
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions about this basic chart?
I do.
Okay.
Now, this is more generational, I guess. We all in this group on these videos, and I guess from 1972 or 83 or something, we were all Pluto and Libra. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, let me just talk about what generational means first, and then I'll come back to that.
Okay, because I think we're also all Uranus and Scorpio.
If you're within 7 years of each other, yes, you are. If you've got a 7-year range of birth, Uranus is in a given sign for 7 years. Okay, that's what I'm saying. You haven't caught Neptune yet. Okay, for the longest time, we were only aware of 7 planets, which meant that our system went, we have the sun, obviously, and then the planets from Mercury to Pluto, to Saturn was it. Okay, we didn't know about Neptune, Uranus, or Pluto out there until I think Uranus showed up in 1785 or something. Maybe they knew about Neptune before that, or I'm not sure. Anyway, the point is we knew about to Saturn, and that was it. That was the extent of our solar system. Okay, and those planets reflect and relate for an astrologer the life that we live that is normal for our most patterns. Like I said, family, partnerships. We have generally, everybody has some philosophy of life, whether they got it through an education or a religion, or they just figured it out themselves. They have friends or some kind of relationships that are determined as friends. If they get married, they more often than not have children. In other words, that whole range of our functioning that doesn't go too far out of the norm. We probably functioned with a lot of Newtonian physics during that period of time without any awareness there was anything else. Okay. And Galileo was in the 1600s before they figured out who goes around who around here. I believe he was 1600s. Anyway, whatever it was, the church didn't like him and wouldn't allow him to even display that science to the world. The outer 3 planets past Saturn, which are Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, represent the advancement of awareness and knowledge that we, for the most part, get in little doses. Okay, and they're slower moving planets. Saturn takes 2.5 years to go around the sun per sign. It takes 30 years to go all the way around once and come back to itself. So when you get out to the outer 3, they go much slower. Uranus is in the same sign approximately 7 years. And so it's the first of what they call the generational planets, because now the group who are born for approximately a 7-year period all have a same theme in the Uranian department. Okay, they're all in the same sign. So we now, and I'm going to backtrack way back when. They're back in China or Europe in the year 00 or the year 1000 or the year 800, or for the most part, the only people who had astrologers were the kings, the emperors, the whomever. They were the only one who had a life. So anybody else, the Chinese, they're out in the rice paddy every day, coming home, eating, sleeping, going to the rice paddy again. So they didn't have a life with a lot of event patterns like we have now. Okay. But now we have individual lives. We have more freedom. In Europe for centuries and centuries, you didn't have the mobility of going wherever you wanted. You couldn't do whatever you wanted. There was a guild, or there was a king or whomever, and your permissions came from whoever was on the top of that totem pole. So now we have that. And now we have generations and groups with general themes. You get to Neptune, which is your idealism and utopian ideals. And I would say 12 to 15 years, maybe, that Neptune is in the same sign. So that's a larger generational span, that there is an ideal. I'm thinking, you know, this stuff is not practical that comes in with them, or it's reflected in fairy tales, for example. A long time ago, and I don't know if these psychologists are around now, who indicate if you look at the theme basically of Neptune, we're talking about, if you look at the fairy tales of a generation and they would be reflected in a Neptune, you understand that group of people. Okay. And I will give you a very good example. Bambi came out. When Bambi came out, and the mommy says there's danger, something to the effect that there's danger in the forest, it's man. That was basically the end of hunting for most people. This country had hunted its game, so on and so forth, because that generation who saw that as children, the majority of them chose not to hunt after that. They never became hunters. Doesn't mean there aren't people out there hunting who catch their game and use it for food source. I'm not indicating that, but the general trend and the general theme that has carried over ever since. And if you were to look at the statistics, you would find that the hunting was just no longer for that group. It just went down. Now you get to Pluto, and Pluto has an elliptic orbit. So it goes with two long sides and very short curve, coming around the bend before it goes back on a long stretch, and then it curves again. The two ends, whatever signs are down there when it passes, have a very short duration. I think the minimum is 12 years. The long stretch sides are 20 to 25 years in terms of a theme. And they transform. So depending upon which signs they're in when they make the curve, those are short terms. The other ones have very long stretches. And so depending upon which sign they're in, will certainly reflect what's getting transformed. And prior to, because it happens to be in Libra and you're talking about that, but I want to back up now to the Neptune in Libra, because that came earlier and had a very long stretch. So Neptune in Libra for the generation of which I'm in. Okay, this was the idealism in partnerships, because this is partnerships. And the way I best reflect that is, we had movies, and the movies were the Doris Day, Rock Hudson type movie. Okay, and you know, they get together, and then the end of the movie, they get married, I guess. And then of course, there's nothing beyond that. So the so the assumption is just they live happily ever after. Okay. Was the ideal. Well, the reality of that, and also Neptune is deception. So the reality of that was, of course, that Rock Hudson had a different preference in partners, and Doris Day's husband stole all her money. So what I'm saying is we were brought up on this, the meet and greet and romance each other. You don't like each other a little bit, and you get so you like each other, and you get married, and everything's fine after that. Okay. When the reality was, just didn't work out that way. We weren't even seeing it in the first place, what was going on. Because the reason we know about Doris Day was she was done with movies, and then she found out that the husband who managed her money had just mismanaged it or whatever. I'm not saying he stole it and took it away, but the mismanagement, she ended up broke. And so she had to go back and do television because there was no more movies for her to do. That was over. So she became a TV star because she needed to earn money, and the end for Rock Hudson wasn't so grand either. But, so what I'm saying is the generation I was in had that as a foundation. And, so you can imagine what happened to our generations when it came to marriages, because there was no real thought about anything practical in them. It was all a beautiful romance. And then, of course, reality came in after that. And you would have had, no, you guys had the Uranus. So I was going to say Uranus, but it didn't come through that fast. So anyway, so there's your big generation of people who started the divorces. Was my generation, having been brought up on the Rock Hudson, Doris Day, simple little, and they weren't the only ones, but that was the best example of what you weren't seeing in reality. And then there's a crash landing when you end up with a relationship and a marriage, and it's nothing like the ideal was, if you will. You get to generation of, let's see, Pluto was in Leo then. And so a lot of us are still alive in that generation, Pluto and Leo. We transformed growing old. Pluto and Leo, you're never going to grow old. Okay. When I was young.
That's the Cocoon.
Huh?
That's the movie Cocoon, right?
Oh, I don't know. I
thought everybody saw that.
Well, it could. Well, yeah, I'm not sure I did. Is that where they went off in a spaceship or something?
No, they found the Fountain of Youth.
Oh, yeah, no. No, I don't know about that. But anyway, what was I going to say? I was coming down this. So we now, because of the elliptic orbit, we have two Plutos that are square, both functioning as adults. And the polarity is horrendous. You're seeing the polarity on this planet because you've got the Pluto and Leo who's not going down. Okay. They are going to live a good life until they don't have one anymore. Okay. But they're not going to stop. They are going to live their quality of life as long as they can. Like I said, when I was young, 40 was old. By the time you were 40, you were an old person. Our generation did not accept that. So we've reinvented growing old. Okay. and don't intend to go there. I mean, you've got, well, you certainly in Trump would have a Pluto and Leo person, and just anybody in that generation. So what have you got? Look at the leaders you've got in the White House, whether either party at this point in time. Pelosi, Biden, you had Trump, and there's got to be a lot of other people who are in those brackets of the late 70s and up into the 80s. They're not retiring. They're not going away. You know, they probably have to cart them out when they're laid out flat from the podiums.
Yeah, I think they're gonna.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is, so that's the transformation of aging on this planet with Pluto down at that extreme. Now, the short end of Pluto in Leo orbit affects, it got down to a point where it would square itself. In other words, to get an update, when they were about 37 was the youngest age. And it's maybe up to 40 now again. But what's happened there is, this is the first, because the square would have come for somebody like my age, normally would come at like 60. Okay. When I was young, the adults would have got at 60. They're not thinking about having a new life at 60 in 1950s or 60s when they got that square. They're winding down, but they're not thinking about having a whole nother life. Okay. Right now, it's come down to the age of as low as 37. And so I know a number of people who've had that transit. I think all my kids have now. And it's interesting because the way they put it, after it takes a while for whatever impact Pluto has to play out to see where you're going to end up. And their remark is, I got a second chance at life. And so the interesting part was they made decisions when they were younger that are the basic decisions that people make. I have a partner, I have children, I have a career. I make those choices, but they make those when they're what, 18, 19, 20, 21. At the very least, your education is going to be determined then, because you're either going to college, you're not going to college, you're going here, you're going there, whatever your choice is, it's going to lead you in a path. And so they made those, and that doesn't mean they made them with a lot of awareness. They had the capacity, but not necessarily, I mean, not wisdom of what's going on this planet. You wouldn't have it at that age, period. You're probably retaliating and just getting the hell out of Dodge to get away from something you don't like. So here comes the Pluto transit, and that blindsides you a lot of times. You don't know what's coming. I mean, if you did not know that the United States chart is having its Pluto transit now, you would have not tagged that when I think 23rd, was it 23rd of February? Actually, it's, I believe, at the time that Russia went into Ukraine and got kicked off the SWIFT system, you would not have understood the dynamics of what getting kicked off that SWIFT system meant for the finances of the United States. You wouldn't have seen it because you don't see it necessarily with Pluto. It comes, it changes, it mixes, you know, it works underneath the surface and then works its way out. So for a great percentage of the kids, 37 and maybe up now till 40, they get that Pluto transit, and they end up in 2-3 years somewhere they had no idea they were going, with stuff they didn't figure they're going to do. And they literally have a second chance at life. but now they're making decisions with a little more awareness of how you function on this planet and what the repercussions are on the decisions you make. So that's the generational ones. They're only meant, you're only meant to basically take a small dose. Everybody's got a Neptune. Everybody's got a sign Pisces, which rules Neptune somewhere in their chart, and everybody's got a 12th house. So you get a little dose of idealism or utopian to bring into this world. And that's all it's meant to be, is a little dose, because that's basically all we can take of that type of energy at a time and integrate it into this system and not be loopy doopy. Okay. Because it's an ideal that can't function here yet. So if you got too heavy a dose of it, you're going to be a real unhappy camper here. Because everything you want, everything you expect, your whole emotions are bound up with it, and it's not going to perform the way you know it can perform, the way you see it in your head and what your expectation is. So, and Uranus represents, for the most part, generationally or collectively, is science. It's coming in with flashes of understanding of how things work here. That's why we're going into an Aquarian age, and we're going to get a lot of it, and we're going to understand a lot of how we operate, what we're designed for. That'll all come out during the next 2,600 years. And we've obviously seen it come in with computers. And now we've got cyberspace. That's all in that range of awareness. So, and Pluto transformations as a collective is, you're probably seeing this planet going through one right now. But part of that is probably because it's affecting the chart of the United States, and we do have an influence globally. We have had an influence globally. We still have some residual influence globally. We still have a portion of the currency is dollar reserve currency. It's no longer 100%, but that hasn't played out yet. You know, that transit's just started for that kind of thing. So does that answer your question, or are you want more on Pluto in Libra? Pluto in Libra people like to, first of all, be involved with other people who have money and status. Okay, so you're going to see a group. There is, at the same time, on a more general level, a transformation of the concept of marriage. So that the Neptunian one that my generations had, and that which marriages were founded on, which was totally unrealistic, impractical attitude about relationships and expectations, now starts to ground down to something more practical, in terms of it will transform to a point of understanding what is within the realm of possibility, what the goals and objectives long-term are, which should include the well-being of any children a marriage has, and being responsible for them, because the Neptune is, in our generation, had no practical understanding of responsibilities in relationships. You know, it was all idealistic, not grounded on any solid ground whatsoever during that generation. That's why I said that's the generation where they all fell apart. The majority of them fell apart. We didn't have divorce before my generation. That was commonplace. You just didn't have it. And then, of course, my generation got hit with the 60s. And so we got hit with a major Pluto-Uranus conjunction in Virgo. That was the 4 years of the Beatles and that time frame, you know, and that was totally something else. You could never recreate that on this planet. You know, by human beings couldn't, you know, that was an organic download of making real changes in individuals and a certain degree of spiritual development thrown in there. Anyway, any questions? Because I just keep going on about this stuff, but this is the outer planets. They hit generational. That
Well, I'm curious if you can see where it goes for the younger generation that's coming in now. Like you're kind of telling a story
of
where
how
it
it,
is.
how it works.
Right. So how, you know, we're breaking, working on relationships and all. What are the kids coming in now? Our kids
What are the kids
going to be
coming
working
in?
on?
Well,
What is their marriages and partnerships and things like that? What are they going to look like? What should we be looking for and kind of, for a lack of better terms, kind of guide them to keep them in line with their charts?
they will keep
We
their,
don't,
well, let me put it this way. It's not a matter of keeping them in line with their charts. They will. It's what you're real, what will be is whether what they are going to be doing, will it be in line with what you are doing now? Because that's the one you're going to push. Okay. For example, I'm Pluto.
okay, I see, yeah.
I'm not going to push Pluto and Scorpio. I'm Pluto and Leo. This is who I am. This is what I express. In fact, that's the other point right now. And only can you get this when there's that short ecliptic in that Pluto and you've got a short span. You got two Plutos in 90-degree angle, which means they're in direct conflict with how to handle Plutonian issues on this planet. And it's our generation who is not going anywhere, not giving up. And now the Pluto in Scorpio generation is coming in and saying, all the problems on this planet are your fault, you guys back here, because you did this and you did that. Okay. And seriously, they believe that. They think, hey, why are you on mute? You should be laughing loud. Yeah, no, I've heard that. It's your fault because you had free sex out there. You gave us all the STDs. You did all this, and it's all here because you guys were in the 60s and, going crazy with, I mean, the song was true. If you're not with the one you love the one you're with. It was true. Period.
Well, I think it's all excusable because you guys had the Beatles.
Yeah, well, something like that. But yeah, we had the guy who told you, he says, follow me, John. So, and they hate Trump. And they absolutely hate Trump with a passion. So it is truly just that thing right there, because Pluto never lets go either. Pluto holds on to stuff. So if they get angry about something, they can be angry for a lifetime. It's that intense, and especially Pluto and Scorpio. So we're certainly watching that in this country, but we're also watching a major power play. Okay. And the interesting part of this power play is there's a lot of Pluto and Leo people out there who've got a lot of bucks, who want to live here forever. They don't want to die. They want to punch themselves into a computer chip bank or something somewhere. They think they've got a way to keep reprocessing all the tissue and everything else. And they don't want to leave the planet at all. And right now they got the money, they've got the science, and they've got their plan and agenda. Whether it functions or works out or not, I have no clue. But what I'm saying is that clash is also occurring on this planet right now when it comes to people having a clash. So anyway, go ahead. You were saying something. I interrupted it. Oh, you want the kids? You have some outer planet stuff. You have outer planets. You have 2 of them. You're seeing the result of the kids. It's chaos. It's mental chaos. They, you know, what happened was those outer planets now moved into the outer signs. So we really got things and energy that were advanced, but we don't have a brain to be able to function with them. Okay, and I'm gonna jump to a conversation you and I had a day or so ago when we were looking at some of this. Well, actually, it was looking at what's the book we were just looking at?
Glamour.
It's the one I don't ever use. Glamour. Yeah, it's Glamour, because I never really read that often. Where they indicate that the brain cells have to be upgraded in order to interact with the energies up on that chart, higher up. Okay. You had, I don't know if you still had the quote or not, but yeah, oh, we were talking about the activity level, because you feel a lot of activity level up here and up here. You know, you'll say to me, I don't know exactly what's happening, but I feel all this. And that was explaining that that is a process by which those brain cells up there are becoming activated. And this is when the etheric energy is moving around in your chakras and so on and so forth. So the energies of these outer planets, we're not equipped for the most part to handle much of them yet. And so when they come in, it's a little chaos anyway, because we don't get a good reading on the information and material because we can't read it in so many words. And then you throw them in direct conflict with themselves, these planets, in a 90-degree angle, and they're just doing battle up there also. Okay, except that now you have it in a young child who goes to daycare or wherever and screams. You know, can't. Uranus and Pluto, and they are at heads, and you've had it from at least 2008 on, but I'm sure you've had it before there. But we've got a great portion of it right now, and you're seeing it in the daycares and everything else, and you're seeing it in the schools. Okay. And you actually saw it, and this has nothing to do with Obama, but during his entire period of from 2008 to 2016, you had the Uranus and the Pluto come together, and that's when they've got the real clash, when they're almost in the same degrees, exactly squaring, and then it would come apart every time you got an Arab Spring. You know, because that's where the revolutions on this planet were at that point in time. That's where the stimulation was, whether they were deliberate or not deliberate, or organic or not organic, that's when they happened. Okay. And if you want to look at this in a much longer scope, I can go back to Karl Marx. I can look at his chart. I can see the same thing. I had to study it for some other reason, his chart, to determine something. It was a class I was taking, and we're using him as an example. And so if you want to look at time as a melody, as a piece of music, then you get a refrain every so often. And if you've noticed that the socialist refrain during this period of time that I'm talking about, especially, it's been an underlying theme, but it came out very strong, and it comes out when these two planets clash again. So if you look at time as a piece of music, and just like any other short piece of music, they write it and then they come back to, what do they call that? I'm sure it's not a chorus, but whatever. I don't know music terms very much, but they'll come back, repeat the same words a little bit, and then they go and they add some more, and then they come back, repeat the same words. Same thing happens in terms of looking at that. You can figure every time these two planets come in direct conflict with each other, that's going to surface, because that was reflected there. That was reflected in everybody who was born at the same time Karl Marx was born. He's the only one who picked up the mantle and did something with it in terms of making it into something other than just some chaos. He made a political movement out of it. And the reason that, I looked at it and said, well, all the other people were born with the same planet, and that's why they were willing to be fodder to push the agenda.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
Can you talk about what it would mean to have those planets in retrograde as opposed to not?
Retrograde generally means that the individual who has them has attached a second. In other words, I can interpret something in the way something's generally interpreted as an astrologer. Okay. When I get a retrograde planet, that individual has tied a secondary issue, a secondary reasoning as the primary of why they're making whatever moves they're going to make and choices they're going to make. So, yeah, it isn't just the normal. They've attached something else to it as an agenda for that movement, and it's personal to them. And when I do talk to people who have them, they will, if I dig, and I don't, it's normal for 3 retrogrades in any given chart. What's not normal is 5 and 6. And more often than not, you will see that people who have 5 or 6 make a world mark also. The world, they show up in the world and have some stronger influence.
Yeah, I think I saw Blavatsky and Annie Besant, and they had quite a few.
Yeah, they have a very wide reach.
I don't remember how many Alice Bailey had, but I'm sure it's not.
I don't
think I did look.
Because you got to remember, she was the secretary. She was the, in a sense. In other words, where Blavatsky was not. She was the originator, and Annie Besant turned around and carried the ball when Theosophy was falling apart. Took it to India. And remember, Annie Besant turned around with a partner who in Theosophy, and they did the entire elemental chart in terms of the weight and the electrons and the diagram of it, because they could see etherically for the entire chart before there was an electron microscope for scientists to do it. They did it through their etheric vision. So, you know, you're looking at people, and they pull in and they process differently. They do not necessarily process in the lines of logic that we do to get to where they're going. They may reverse the process of number 1 and number 2, or number 3 and number 1 in a logical line of processing that we normally do. You know, and they live to some extent sometimes on another level. For the most part, they occupy that. That's where they park themselves. I remember somebody who had a bunch of them, and we were doing a chart, and I never will do charts of a husband and wife together, because I don't care how long they've been together. They don't necessarily really fully know each other. Okay. There are private parts that people keep, married or not. But they pushed, and this looked like a pretty good relationship. And he had a lot of retrogrades. And I said something about, you know, that he had him, and that for the most part, he was really living on another little dimension a lot of the time. And there was nothing in his behavior pattern that would tell me that. I just knew it from the chart. And he said, yeah, I do. He says, that's why. And I know that this woman was never going to forget this when he said it. I thought, oh, wow. He said, yeah, that's why I always ask her every morning what I can do for her. Okay. That she needs done today. Because I need to get all that out of the way. And she thought he was just being this absolutely wonderful person. And now she became aware that this was just he's going to go function and live on the level he is, but it's not his great love for her and his kindness. It was a practical move. And I thought, oh, this one she would never forget when he pops out with this. So, but that's why I almost never, I made an exception there. I won't make one again. Simply because you might think you know your partner. That doesn't mean you do. And there's a lot of information in these charts. You go, you know, when you can read them. That tells you a lot.
Yeah, no kidding.
Guys too.
No kidding.
I mean, what was it like for each of you when I went through your personality profile?
Well, I personally, and this may be in my chart, where I didn't necessarily, I thought you had the wrong guy. And it took me a while to realize that you knew me better than I knew me by looking at it. Because you know, when we got together, I was in La La Land, probably, right? So I didn't know what was going on anyway. So
Yeah.
But you helped me get grounded in that. That helped me ground, I think, in itself to take a look at, oh, no kidding, this is all true. And then not only is it true, you had me better than anybody, than I had me. And that was scary a little bit. And then I didn't know, before talking to you, that my life was about relationships and partnerships and being in the military. I was in the military. I was on small teams in the military. My money comes from the military. We have this business now, and I'm always trying to figure who would want, be the, partners, and who's the other businesses we want to work with. And I had no idea any of that was just the life I was living. And then I told you last weekend that I talked about all this stuff in front of a bunch of people and without any regard to what they thought about it. And I said, I didn't hold my tongue. And you said, well, you'd have to tie your tongue down and staple it. And you'd probably still tell them what you thought.
Yeah, and the thing about it is, on that chart, your Mercury and Pluto are together. So you're going to talk about transformation. You're going to talk about all of those things. That'll be one of the themes, along with the money theme and making money, even though you told me that you didn't care about money when I first met you, you know, which is fine. You can talk, you just didn't know yourself.
Yeah, I didn't.
Yeah.
And what did Corey say when he started talking? He said, so you're telling me we're just flying by the seat of our pants this whole time, you know? and you're like, yep, pretty much. And he's like, great, you know, what the? So, no, this is a whole game changer for sure. Tom's screen is frozen right now.
Is it still frozen?
Yeah, you're frozen. I don't know if it,
No.
Carla's not frozen,
No, we'll see.
but
You're all moving.
No, I think my head's moving. So Bull, what happened with your personality profile?
When we talked about it, I was laughing the whole time because I'm like, I thought that Craig had given you some more intel onto my background and some of my history, but then you started talking about things that only I know, and I was like, whoa. So, yeah.
Yeah, because Craig didn't say a word to me. He just indicated that he was going to gift you with that chart, and that was it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. People, I mean, they oftentimes they gift somebody, but we never discuss who it is. It's just the date and place, and that's it. And sometimes people have said to me, well, don't you need to know a little about them? I said, no, I don't need to know anything about them. You know, so that's, yeah. But once you realize that there's things that nobody else knew about you to be able to tell me or whatever, then what impact does it have for you?
It was very much like a nice feeling of calm, because it was instead of having to work against the current of the stream, or working against what like the universe had figured out a long time ago, I could just go with the flow and relax, because things are gonna, there's certain things that were gonna happen. I could still work hard and try to influence things or whatever, but there was certain times where it's a good time to make a decision, and there's certain times you're like, okay, I'm just gonna sit and wait this one out, and kind of go from there. So it gives you kind of a little bit of intel on how you want to approach things in the present, and then also things in the future. So that was huge. And just especially being recently retired from the military, being kind of at a crossroads of like what kind of job I want to do afterwards, if I want to do a job afterwards, what all my options were, and then just like, man, so having that to kind of reference against was like, it was like a huge sounding board, which made certain decisions or certain things I was thinking about not really the greatest way to go, but then kind of highlighted things that had matched up with the chart of things that had like a higher level of success and a higher kind of percentage of where I wanted to be in the future. So it's been I think my blood pressure went down like 10 points after, and like as these things started coming to fruition. And then like I would always text you, I'm like, oh hey, like coincidentally this happened on this, and then you're like, oh yeah, because that's what your chart says. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, so super cool.
Yeah, because now you're talking about the transits that it goes with, but the personality profile itself, of course, is you, and your basic expression, and the fact that somebody even knows those things
Yeah.
had to have some impact in terms of the validity of this information.
Yeah, because and I mean, it goes back to what you were saying before, like there, with the couples charts, you have certain things that everybody keeps down in their deep down in their dark basement that they don't share with anybody, and that's why I'm like, oh, as we started going through it, I'm like, okay, maybe she talked to Craig and got some stuff, but then there were things that I know that I've never shared with anybody, and we started talking about those things, and I was like, how huh? and so I was just kind of giggling after a while because it was so silly. It's just like and you can actually, like, you're like, what's funny, why are you laughing? I'm like, because this is like completely spot on to, and I've never told anybody about this stuff, but you're basically walking me through portions of my life and how I dealt with like real critical events that kind of shaped who I am and stuff into modern day. So it was definitely a trip.
Yeah, but I guess one of the things, for example, I did a lot of transits for my son, my youngest son, at one point, where he had a first of all, we're talking about transits, but the people who would be listening to this wouldn't know what they are. So a real quick shot about transits is you've got your stationary chart that Donnie asked about that never changes. I mean, that's the one you work with in this lifetime. But obviously the planets keep moving out there in the real world. So as astrologers, we keep track of where they move to. And when they line up with one of your stationary planets, there is going to be what I call an event pattern. In other words, this is really how you grow in a given lifetime. These are the packets of opportunity and adjustments and so on and so forth that are in that, they're already set up in that chart when you get it. And that's because I can say, like that sheet of paper that you saw with all the planetary stuff, I can buy a book with 100 years of that. So in the case of my son, my youngest one, there came a time when I don't keep track of their charts all the time, but I thought, geez, I better look and see what he's got going on coming up. And so I went to him and I said, hey, John, you know that saying shit happens? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, it's coming for you. Okay. And I think that was November, and this was to start in February or something like that. But I just want you to know in advance it's coming. And so, and I see him, I don't know, a few weeks later or something. He says, I think some of it's already started. And I said, no, not like it's going to start, not like it's going to hit.
Oh.
Okay. And he has one of those charts, a little bit like Donnie's, where you got a lot of planets together. So when things are really good, they're really good. And then when like a Saturn comes along that says you got to make some adjustments here in the real world to adapt to the way things are done now on this planet versus the day you were born, then you're going to be dealing with issues. And in my son's case, he had 12 issues, one a week for 12 weeks. Bing, 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 bing. Okay. And so I actually wrote out a sheet. I told him exactly which day on each of these days and what was going to happen. And he had so much momentum going in the direction he was going that he couldn't pull out of it. I mean, he could not hide. God found him wherever he was, at that point in time. He had no way out. And so when that was all done, and he's my kid, he's my Leo kid. He says, Mom, I ain't gonna change till I want to change. Okay, which I believe him, okay. All right. So I had bought him a book on the transits, and I marked in the book which ones they were. And so about a year later or so, it was on his bookshelf, maybe a year and a half later. I look in the book and he's got little marks where those transits were, and he had a little line say, this is what I did. This is what I didn't do. Okay. And he self-corrected himself, because this was a kid you couldn't tell anybody, couldn't tell him anything. Not that you guys would know any personalities like that. Right. No, none of you. Right. So he self-corrected his behavior and so on and so forth. But I mean, it was just there. And, but what I also said to him, and this was the point I was trying to make, is I said to him, you know, John, you should not be asking, you should be asking, how can I do this? In other words, how can I go to a book with a set of mathematical numbers? I said, because I could have done this the day you were born. In other words, once I had his time, date, and place, all I had to do was look at where Saturn was going to be when it comes in to do those 90-degree angles. And I could have wrote them out then. You know, in that regard, you work usually closer to it, so you know exactly where they are in the environment, because then you have a better idea of exactly what's going to happen at that point in time. But the point was, I said, you should be asking, how can I do this? In other words, what is going on that it is possible for somebody who's got the training I have, doesn't have to be me personally, but somebody who's got the training can go in there and write all this. And that is the real question anybody should be asking. You know, now we have a little bit better idea in terms of science when Lipton talks about we have a receiver on every cell membrane of our body. So yeah, we can receive the data. We are logged on, and this whole program is running somewhere, and we are connecting with it in terms of our chart and our transits, because they arrive on time when that transit hits. And now I want Donnie, tell me about the last one you just had that you were waiting all day for.
Yeah, that's funny. So I think, so it was Uranus. Well, I don't remember who else it was. I don't remember what.
Doesn't
What
matter,
other-
but it was scheduled for, and I give a 24-hour range. I give a day range. That's it. Okay, go ahead.
So it was on Monday, and I'd been paying attention all day Monday, and I just woke up in the morning. I said, I'm going to stay as aware as I possibly can, and I'm going to watch this, and I'm just going to work. That's what I set my mind to, just working hard all day and getting anything I needed done. And whatever came, I was just going to do it. Well, the day kind of came and went, and I was exhausted, I think, and I went to bed kind of early, probably around 10 o'clock or something. And I got woken up at 3 a.m. It was 3:20 a.m. or something to that. And I said, I need to meditate. I didn't really know why I needed to meditate. I just knew I needed to meditate. So I got up, I sat, and I started meditating. About 5 minutes after I was just kind of clearing everything out and relaxing, everything just dissolved for a second. And I didn't understand I didn't understand it. I still, and I don't understand it, but I guess I got a download, or everything just dissolved. And in that second, I knew that everything that we had been talking about, everything that I had read, I knew that it was real. I knew that it was just, for lack of better terms, I knew I was dreaming. I knew that there was more, and I kind of was like, oh, that's where this is going, kind of a thing. And it was overwhelming. And even so, So I think I wrote you shortly after that, because you had said to me at some point during the day, you said, well, when you get serious about it, you know, this is kind of what will happen. And then it hit me that spiritual growth is all that really matters, essentially. Like, you know, all this is going on, but it's not going on. And I just knew that was it. This was more than this lower three, for lack of better terms. And then I had wanted to hold on to it and try to sort through the download, but I knew that it was impossible. I knew it was going to be impossible. There was too much there to try to figure out. And then it even threw me off for a couple of days. Even Kim noticed. Probably some of the people I talked to noticed where I was kind of off and maybe in la la land, and I'd been thinking about it probably too much. And you said, yeah, you're not going to figure it out. That's not something for you to try to dissect and understand, even though you probably will try. But then I just let it go. And what the stranger part to me is how absolutely profound it was when it was there and for that 1 second. And then now I don't have any real, I let it kind of go, and that's gone. I know it's not, apparently not gone, but because I look at things a little bit differently, I saw that we're just a bunch of numbers in a story and charts, and we're all, I don't know, I saw it from further out for a second, maybe.
Okay, so I want to come back and distill really the essence of the transit. All right, so transits come along, and they, to me, I do call them like a data download or an information. They'll have different qualities of how they may impact depending upon what planet you're talking about. But in this case, what I want to go to is, and they come right down to the day. They actually come down to the minute, but I give you a range of a day. Okay. A transit is bringing something, some energy, some information or event pattern to you that you have not experienced before. And that's why, even though you know what and there's a specific date and they arrive on time, interestingly enough. I mean, and that I think there's hints that it's related to the law of thermodynamics and a couple of other things put together as to why, but otherwise we don't have an understanding of why, but they do arrive. And there is a time, and astrologers can nail that time down within you could probably nail it exactly, except I don't do that. I go 24-hour pattern. So that's why generally I indicate to people, start to watch when you've got that date, because this is something that's not in your head yet, and it's going to make a pass by or two or whatever to get you interested enough to have it happen. In your case, you do a lot of meditating. You're sitting there waiting with antennas open anyway. And then it passes some information to you. It gives you some opportunity to work with this or that. It creates an event pattern that may change the direction of things. If we're looking at a square, 90-degree angle, this means two things have to be integrated that don't basically get along to start with. So in a given lifetime, then this is where you work to, let's say you get a new opportunity to come and to upgrade or get a new job with new skills or something. Those would be the 3-part ones that would take you the time to really get it all together, make the transitions, to put you in an upgraded place or whatever it might be. So, and I'm going to diverge for a minute. I do teach classes every once in a while, and I usually teach a small group, and we work with their own charts. And one of my younger students had gotten one of his younger buddies to be in this class. So he was the youngest one, and this is all brand new to him. And he does have a transit coming up. Our classes will be done by the time it comes up, but we talk about it and we indicate it's there and this is what the timing will be. And it's related to, in his case, it was work. And he's talking back and forth and he's saying, well, but you know, if we talk about this, I can, you know, I'm thinking about this, so I can probably just, you know, maybe I'll just make this happen, whether it's not real. He doesn't know anything about transits yet. And this is the first shot he's ever had looking at his chart. And so he's, you know, I can just imagine this happens on that date. And I just turned and said, you're not that powerful, first of all, because you're not. I mean, in other words, what just came to you, you're not going to make that up. You didn't have, I know what you got. You got a flash of a big picture. Okay, that's really what it was. It was just an instantaneous flash. It happens to be in there now, but not in your consciousness because your brain can't deal with it yet. It'll be in your mind. It will unpack itself over time, but you couldn't make that happen. And it couldn't make you wake up in the middle of the night when it actually made the contact. You know, I mean, in other words, you're not making yourself wake up because, oh, maybe it'll hit me at this point in the morning. Okay. You're getting an understanding it's coming by, and yes, you're waking up, but from the inside, from a level of awareness, to have that happen. That I just thought was a good example because it was actually, you know, you woke up out of a sleep and became aware of it. So anyway, so this student, the class is end and he's off doing his life pattern, and it's not a pattern I don't interact with him that often. There's no reason to, you know. But he calls me after the transit and he said, you're absolutely right. And I just saw it and I understood exactly what it was saying, et cetera, et cetera. So, but it was a level of awareness that he had not had before that, which became very clear. And so that's what, I mean, and sometimes transits come along and push in other areas, you know, that make changes. But the important thing, and I think Bull was the one who started talking about that, is because, and I have a friend who knows nothing about this stuff. And he says, well, what happens when you have to tell somebody something bad? And I said, there isn't anything bad when you understand what this is, because this is the full progression of the event patterns that are going to happen in your life to bring you to accomplish the goal that was determined before you were born. In other words, they talk about the 4 lords of karma are the ones who decide where you get placed. The soul can indicate there's a need for an incarnation, but the soul does not have a vast enough perspective to understand all the dynamics that need to be factored, because you are a planetary issue. First of all, your allegiance is to this planet. It can be to the respect of your parents, and you can respect your parents for having done the job to get you here. But your allegiance is, first of all, to your own little divine spark, ultimately. But you're on this planet. You are a planetary issue. You are here for the purposes of this planet. Surprise, surprise. And not just to pick up the garbage. Okay. You are an integral part. I think somewhere he indicates that ultimately it's to be a fully conscious unit in the cellular body of this planet, which is a long way off. So nobody has to worry about getting routed over there real fast and missing all this stuff that's going on down here. You'll be here for a long time going through developmental stages. But anyway, so there, for every chart And like I said, all those transits are already they're already there. If as long as nothing happens to this solar system, these planets in this system, that you could print those books forevermore, as long as all of the pieces in the solar system remain in the places they are. So they're all circling and going around, you know, in time. So anyway, but that's what those transits are, because you can't have them all loaded when you get born, because we grow up very slowly here. You know, you got to learn to walk and talk, and then get some mathematics and some letters so you could read. You know, we have a process, and it's a developmental process, and we pattern. I mean, that's what we do, is we pattern really well in terms of the basic things of how we operate down here. And you have the chart, so you've got, otherwise, if you did not have a chart, you'd be all over the place all the time. Oh, you know, with no structure. I don't do that many children's charts. Sometimes I'll do them for parents, because then they have a better chance of understanding the personality profile that's going to come out of this little kid. And there's no guarantee it's a mini me by any stretch of the imagination. Children are individuals just like everybody else. But I don't do children until they're in their later teens, just for a number of reasons. First of all, it's too much information. It's too powerful, and it gets misinterpreted. By the time they're 16, 17, I don't tell them something they don't know, but I confirm what they have been figuring out about themselves. So what I see happen is they usually progress in life a little faster and a little more firmer with their feet on the ground, because now they've got a confirmation of they are who they have thought they were. Where what the majority of kids spend those years just trying to figure out who they are all the time, and then they get bounced around against other people's opinions of who they are, whether it's social media or whether it was just when you didn't have social media, but you still had the kids in school telling tales about you one way or another. Okay, so the point is, when they got their feet on the ground and it's solid underneath them, they are inclined to make decisions that take them where they're going to go sooner, and and with more certainty. So more often than not, they go farther faster in a career path or something like that, just simply because they've got more certainty about who they are, for starters. And then it's just like when we talk about your five senses. This is how you get information in terms of growing. And you know, it's, you and your car are not one. In other words, your body and who you are and what you think is this unit. Those come in those five senses, plus each of those five senses has five ranges of development. So as you develop and integrate, and become more aware on those other levels, you then can pull more data in. Well, when it comes to your life here, those transit packages, whatever is bringing to you, is your developmental phases that are your opportunities that fit your purpose and your agenda. And the more you can work with them within your life pattern, the less stressed you are going to be, the happier you're inclined to be, because you feel good about yourself. You're not fighting yourself because some part of you is trying to tack on somebody else's agenda So you can be like them, or you can fit into this or that, or evade some criticism where they don't have any awareness of what's going on and they criticize you for this or that because they want you to be more like them, probably so they can feel good about something, you know, who knows. So where the more you can be in tune with you, because this ends up being your truth. That personality profile is yours. You know, when you work with it and you work with those transits, which now bring you what you need in the timing that you need, you know, you got less stress. You know, you're more certain of yourself. And so, but again, it comes from the outside, but it comes to you. It's got your name on it. And it's got your timing. And sometimes, yes, you need to change course. So, and so you might get a real zinger. But going back to the question when my friend said, what happens when you have to tell them something bad? You don't. This is part of their pattern. It's not bad. Sometimes it might look like it is to the individual at the moment. But when they start looking long term, they see exactly how that fit in. You know. You been there, Tom?
Yeah, that's what I was alluding to earlier when I was talking about my chart. Oh,
Speak louder.
speak louder. Okay. No, you hit it the nail right on the head there. It's like it's what I might perceive is something bad that's going to happen through the transit. It's like I just roll with it. I know it's not bad. It might be it seemed like a bad instance, but it's something that I need, and I need to unpack it and work through it so that I can keep moving forward. So I look at it in a positive aspect now, where before I've been like, you know, get myself down because something bad happened to me. But it's not like that. It's really, it's all good.
Hey, let me mute and you go on.
All right. Well, did you get all that? Because I pretty much already said everything I needed to say. But yeah, I mean, I used to think, you know, why is this bad stuff happening to me? And now,
is that before a chart?
Yeah. But now it's like, and even like when I saw my first chart, when we had our first reading, I looked at some of this stuff that, you know, like I could perceive it as being negative, but you just kind of got to flip it because it's really not. It's just something that's been given to me, and I have to work through it because it's a part of my growth progression. And so I just have, it's there, it's mine. And so now I like embrace it because it's something that I need.
Yeah. And it is, because you don't just get from here to there without anything happening to you.
Right.
Without growing and developing, you know, it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And that's
so
that's the point too, is that without those, nothing's happening to you.
Right.
You know, I have seen, I don't want to go into names, but I've seen public figures who are out there, and if they have no transits that year, I don't care what they plan on doing, it isn't happening. And I mean, and that's a very pragmatic statement. But if you don't have transits coming, that's a year of rest. In other words, one might think that they go, and that's why I said you're not your car. A lot of times people think whatever they have out there can make things happen. If they aren't in that chart to happen, they ain't happening, period. It isn't because you got a new car or you got a different job or something that all these events are going to happen. Or if you go to work every day, something is going to happen. If it's not scheduled, it's not happening. Then you're working with wherever you are at that point in time, or you're just settling from some transit that happened earlier. But it's the event patterns, and if you don't have them, the events aren't occurring. You can't make them up. You can't make them happen yourself.
Right.
You know, that's a hard one, I'm sure, for a lot of people. Like I said, it's a pragmatic statement. It's a hard one for people to realize that that it happens to be that way. But it's like physics of consciousness. He talks about time comes in chunks. It's not a continuous stream, for example, where we think time is a continuous stream. That's an illusion of our brain because of the number of times it loops gives us that illusion. But, and it's just like, I mean, if there's something going on, you're going to get a chunk. And the time will be related to an event. It's going to be related to some substance that comes to you. And so, in fact, I was writing a note about, I don't know where it was. In other words, the new religion, you know, is invocation, revocation. But I think, let me see if I can find. I was talking about Christianity instead. You know, we have all these prayers, give me my daily bread and all that. I mean, that's what we were brought up with. And so probably in the future, we aren't going to be given prayers like that. We're going to look and see what the transit patterns are in our life pattern, because that's what's coming to us. We can look at a given lifetime, our own, and say, okay, well, what's on the agenda? You know, what am I being given to work with, kind of thing. I still can't find that note. That I never can, you know. I write something down, but I can never find it afterwards. Isn't that amazing? Can't imagine why I can't do that, huh? Anyway, but that's basically what it will be. It'll be, yeah, is you're just looking for the new ingredients and what's coming and when, and because believe me, most people do not have a lifetime of rest here. Every once in a while I see a chart where they're kind of, the whole thing is, you know, they've been given a lifetime to kind of rest a little. Most people not. In fact, that's another thing for me to talk about, is the way this whole thing is set up. It's guaranteed evolution. It's guaranteed action. You are not parking on this planet. Okay. Not only does DK say, and I think probably from Cosmic Consciousness, which was back with Blavatsky, she would have made the same remark. We are pilgrims on this planet in a sense, but we don't ever get to stay anywhere. We are traveling through from that bottom of that chart up to the top, and we're out, going somewhere else deliberately, that we've made a choice of. But that this is not a planet for staying here, living forever. So anybody who wanted to stay on this planet and live here forever without going through all the reincarnation processes that get you eventually out the door, it wouldn't work, because that's not the design of this planet. So ultimately, it would be not a winner. That circle, Donnie, do you want to put up that chart, your chart, for a minute?
Yeah, I just realized I was sharing the wrong ones, but I'll be right back.
Okay, when you have a circle, and it's divided into 12, basically, you could lay 4 different squares into this chart. In other words, there's a 90-degree angle between the first line. Do you have your little pointer or not, Donnie?
Can you see that?
Yeah, so go over to your rising sign where it says 25. Yeah, okay. That's the first house. It's 90 degrees to the line going straight up and down, which is 4th house down in the bottom. Yeah, okay. And that's 90 degrees from the opposite of the line we just talked about, the one where you got all the planets. Okay, and that's 90 degrees from the line going straight up and down up on the top. All right, so when you put those together, that 90 degrees is conflict. So whatever's 90 degrees from something else, they don't do things the same way. They'd both like to do their thing, their 100% their way. So there's an innate conflict, which means stuff is going to be worked out. But it also means that this implies action. So those 4 houses that are in conflict represent 1, you physically, 2, mother physically, 3, the opposition one is the partner, and the 4th one up on the top is the dad. So the point is, when you come in, first, it doesn't take anybody that long to figure out they're a replacement for one of the parents in this life. In other words, that the mom and the dad aren't going to be around forever. They have a lifespan. And the new person, the individual, is the replacement for one of the 2 of them in the long run. Okay. So the disharmony comes between the individual and the mother, individual and the father, and the opposing force where you eventually have to learn to kind of get along with partner, whoever is chosen for the partner. So that guarantees nobody's going to rest around here. There's going to be constant evolution and development. There's a rare set of circumstances, but they have to be born further north where you might get a happy scenario, but not often. So that in itself is guaranteed evolution, because you're not going to be a mini me of somebody else, and you're not always going to get along with them. If you throw another set between house number 2, house number 5, house number 8, and house number 11, and we don't have to point where those are. And what that is 1, house number 2 is your money. House number 5 is your kids. So if you got kids, there goes part of your money right there.
Yeah, I think I have Saturn in the 5th house, but it's not.
It's either there or it's not. It's not missing. Your Saturn is in house number 9. Oh wait, no, that's Sagittarius. Oh, you didn't put your Saturn in?
Yeah, I think it's missing. Yeah, it's missing off of this one.
Okay, all right.
Saved
Well,
the
anyway.
wrong one.
So, and house number 8, I'm talking about this second square I'm talking about that's in the chart itself, is the partner's money or the government also, which is in your pocket. And then you've got friends is the 4th link. So you've got your money, your kids, or whoever you choose to love, your partner's money, or your relationship with, a lot of times I've said Uncle Sam is my partner, because, they get your money if nobody else does for taxes and so on and so forth. And then you've got your friends or your humanitarian organizations, or however you want to look at it. So the point is that's another area where nothing's going to stay fully stable, because that is going to be a mobile movement between money and kids, money and whoever you choose to love. I mean, if you're young, you're taking them out on a date and you're spending money. If you're going to work, then Uncle Sam is on the opposite end of that. It's going to take some of it no matter what. And you got a partner, and they would be happy to share your funds with you. And then you've got friends, or like I said, humanitarian organizations or whatever. So, and then you've got a third set of squares, which is now this one relates to the mind. It's house 3, 6, 9, and 12. House number 3 represents your first 6 years of education. And house number 6 is from 6 to 12 years of education. So already whatever you learned in the first 6 years gets an upgrade and a change and a development from 7th grade to 12th. If you go on to college, then you change your ideas and your attitudes again because you feed in more information. That's also religion up there. It's also your philosophy of life that you're forming. And if you make it through all those, okay, then house number 12 is your spiritual education and universal, love and understanding and spirituality. So nothing gets to rest here because everything is somewhere in this chart in conflict with another part. And it's designed that way because it's guaranteed evolution. You're not coming in and staying the same through a course of a lifetime because the innate design is there. The issues, the challenges and the conflicts are in all 4 of them is you got 4 signs that all want to do it their way. And they're in that chart somewhere. And so each of those squares has growth and development implied. And then the transits come along and they give you the packages and data and information and opportunities and expectation for change sometimes that that impact you personally, because then it's a matter of where your planets fall and when they get impacted. So, questions on that, guys? Can you see it? Can you see what I'm saying? Tell me what I just said. Can you hear me, Donnie?
Oh, I hear you.
And you can punch that off if you want and put back to everybody. Yeah.
Oh, there's just yeah, we did lose both. I'm sorry, I don't know how to talk anymore. I think I'm learning how to relate to others at this point, the earthlings.
How old are you now?
We don't know anymore. I don't know. We were talking about this last night.
Yeah.
Nadia and I were.
So, well, then I got to hear from you, Tom.
Wait, you go
yeah,
off
let's swap mics. All right. So I don't know. I think what I just got out of that, or just the thought that popped in my head with you talking about, we're not a parked car. We got to keep moving because, and we're a part of this planet. And it just kind of makes sense to me because the planet doesn't stop moving. The planet doesn't stop evolving. So why should we, right? But yeah, Donnie and I were talking about this whole age thing last night because, it was my birthday and I turned 48. And he's like, so how old do you feel? And I'm like, now or like a year ago before all this, we started doing all this. And I'm like, I feel like I'm on top of the world. I don't know how old I am anymore. I just I don't really, it doesn't faze me. I don't really think about it. So I don't know. That's all I got right now, Carla.
Yeah, but just the implied continual demand for evolution that's built into the system we live in.
Right. And that goes back to, it makes sense to me. Why wouldn't we, why would we want to sit stagnant? We can't. We're a part of this planet. Like, this planet is evolving constantly. So we should be too. The universe is evolving constantly. We should be too. There's no stopping. You can't stop. The minute you stop, then what? You got to keep rolling forward.
Yeah. And so the awareness, now that we're looking at that, how about 2 years ago versus now? Part of what you said, I think, but
I can only conceptualize that I know that there's been a giant change. I can't even remember what I was like 2 years ago. I really can't.
Yeah.
I know I was, my wife will say I was probably a bit more belligerent and short fused. And now I just, whatever. And going back to I think Bull, it's too bad he left, but he kind of hit something that sparked for me too, was knowing all of this and having your chart and kind of knowing or having a better understanding of where you fit in everything. It's like a huge burden off your shoulders. I don't stress about much of anything anymore. And if I do, it is so short-lived that it's not even recognizable. It's like I process through it so quick and I'm just like, hey, okay, stop. We got to do this. Just do it. You either get it right or you get it wrong. You just do it. And so it just lifts a huge burden off your shoulders too, from a stress perspective.
yeah. And the interesting thing about the stress is you don't realize it, but the stress is 24 hours a day when you have it.
Absolutely.
And when you remove it, then you've removed that stress on a 24-hour day removal also. I've had a lady who was very concerned about a family member, and had been for decades, a sibling. And because she had expectations that this family member did not perform. And so we looked at her family member's chart, and I said, well, that's not what this person is going to do. Those are not her priorities. In other words, her sister, the one I was talking to, was laying expectations on her from her viewpoint of how she should be and what she might be missing in life. And I said, but that's not her agenda. She doesn't want to do any of that. And once the woman I was talking to understood that, like she said, it took all that stress off of her. And I realized, yeah, now that stress, that's 24-hour day stress. You don't realize it when you're carrying it around, but it is. So when you unload it, you've just unleashed a lot of energy for yourself that you're not having to fight yourself with. Big deal.
Yeah. Actually.
Because it relates to your health too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just going to say, this is something that anybody that really suffers from like anxiety or anything like that should really seriously consider doing, because Donnie and I talked about this before. It's just like, when I started this journey, it's better than going to any psychiatrist or psychologist that I've gone to before. This is understanding yourself and how to kind of process and work through these issues without really having to have these outside influences coming in. It's for me, it's been more, I don't know how to describe it, but it's better than any therapy. I just leave it at that.
Yeah, because I mean, this is your truth. It's nobody else's.
Right.
It's your path. It's nobody else's. And when you're not fighting yourself, because you're now working with yourself, yeah, I mean, you get some peace.
Yep. And you realize too that everything that you thought stressed you and you would kind of point fingers in other directions, it really all comes right back here. It's
Yeah, it does.
it's you manifesting that feeling, that emotion of what you're dealing with. No one else is doing that to you. They might be presenting something that you're not thinking you can deal with, and you perceive that as them putting stress on your shoulders, but it's really not them. They're just doing what they need to do. Now I need to figure out, it's not them. I need to figure out how to process through it. It's me. If I'm stressing out about it, it has nothing to do with them. It's all how I'm dealing with it. And so it's been mind blowing and awakening, and it's like point of no return. I ain't going back. I don't want to.
Oh, you don't have to, right?
And
Yeah.
you know how fast it is.
Right.
I mean, that's the amazing thing. Because like I said, I've seen all of you. I have an idea from the number of your group members that have had those chart readings, and how quickly that has effectively changed their life patterns and generally their relationships.
Yeah.
And yeah, in an amazingly short period of time.
Yeah. No doubt.
But I think basically if there was a description of that, is the information goes in, and then the internal parts of you work with it and move the furniture around, in a sense, in there, to get a better design, a better functioning.
So what you're saying is we should be working on an invocation aspect. Because we
Well,
don't
you
have
already
any
had
part, DK says we don't really have part in the evocation because that's coming to us, but we're invoking this. And that's where the focus should be, is putting this
Yeah, the
material
chart-
and understanding it.
The chart reading was the invocation.
Right, okay.
And what you are experiencing is the evocation, the process.
Right.
In other words, the information went in, then internally, your internal parts work it around, and place truth, probably your truth, in place of whatever you were shoving in there, which appeared to be related to external stuff that didn't have anything to do with you.
I
And most-
find that, sorry.
Yeah, and most people do that. I mean, it's just natural, because you listen to people from the outside. You haven't been given this information when you're young, so you don't really have it. And that's what I'm saying, is the young, teenagers or late teens or whatever, they're trying to figure out who they are, and they're having all this crap thrown at them by somebody else who's trying to clamber up themselves up the ladder, making somebody, climbing on the top of somebody else by cutting them down. You got all that mumbo jumbo in there. And that's where the kids who have this awareness earlier, they go make their decisions based on, they know who they are and they know the direction they want to go. They're not going to listen to somebody else's bullshit who's their age, who's trying to cut them down, And of course, my kids, my daughter, certainly by the time she was 12, she was aware, in her case, of her chart. And she would, Mom, you got to look at my chart. I know I'm having a transit, because she had then become aware of her own pattern enough to know when something was coming in that was now going to be integrated into the system. So she's saying, I know that this is here. Confirm for me that, and we'll get a little bit of a look of what it's going to be, because that's the cushion. There is a cushion. Once you know these things will show up. When they do, if there's an expectation of a change or something, you've cushioned it. It's got a cushion to land on, and you say, oh, there it is. Okay, well, that's what I need to work with. And then so it's not the wind tunnel. That was the other thing, because when you don't have it, it's like going down a wind tunnel. You don't know when you're going to get blown from side to side, and something's going to come at you. You now know, because there aren't other transits in other words, the transits are the transits, and nothing else is really coming in. That's not that to have a real impact on you, except your transits, because they're the ones that got your number, they got your address, and they come, and they basically come on time. So now you got a clue. I mean, there are people, I know some of them don't want nothing to do with this information. They want to run blind through life. You know, that's their choice. If I never, you know, I don't argue the point with them, with any of them, because if that's the way they choose to do it, then there's something there for them to learn one way or another, you know. But having the information does, it is a cushion. It's, you walk out the door and you have a better sense, one, of who you are, and you have some sense of what you're going to meet, so to speak, you know, in terms of big things that are going to impact you. So, no, I would expect in the Aquarian age now, which is coming up, everybody is eventually going to have this as just a part of their awareness, because we'll shift to more of the mental plane at this point in time. That's what'll happen during the age of Aquarius, and we've got 2,500 years, so nobody who's listening to this has to worry it's happening tomorrow. But you will have that awareness, and you will work with yourself on your little plan and your little purpose of a given lifetime, because you're not going to want to work against yourself. Why would you? You know, and literally a given chart, it'll be a matter of looking and being able to look ahead a little and say, oh, okay, well, this is, you know, this is what I'm being given, versus the prayer of give me my daily bread, and why don't you, you know, drop some money in my bucket at the same time on, you know, because all our prayers now are give me, give me, give me. They're not, what can I do for you? You know, I mean, we are here at the behest of our soul, which is here at the behest of the planet. You know, we're low man on the totem pole down here. But we can move up that totem pole a lot faster when we're willing to work with our own agenda. And I think some people are sometimes afraid, oh, well, this will make me have these things happen, or they must feel too vulnerable to listening to things and think they're going to be coerced or something. But no, it's health and well-being and being happy. Just being happy.
That's
You
just,
shut your.
sorry.
Go ahead. You got your microphone? Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't mean to giggle, but it kind of just struck me as a little bit funny, because you said, you know, kind of like people that just kind of shun away from this and don't want to pursue it because maybe they think they're being coerced, right? But if you don't follow your own path, you're following somebody else's, so you've already been coerced. So wouldn't you rather be coerced in doing what's right for you than doing what's right for somebody else?
Yeah, and you know, when I teach astrology, for example, the first thing I say is there's no bad signs. Okay. Because you see, for each of those squares, those 4 points want to do it differently than the other 3 in that square box. So this guy's always criticizing that guy and over there and over there, trying to push him to get it to do another way. So, I mean, that's what you have out there in the world. Until people really understand that everybody they're going to follow that chart. That's who they are. And that alone, first of all, like I said, you got what, 7 or 8 billion little universes running around. in the heads of all of everybody. And for that, we probably do pretty well because everybody's the center of their own universe here. But a lot of compassion should come for humanity when you really understand the dynamics that this guy, this is who he is. He's gonna grow and develop from the core that he's working with this time, but he can't go be somebody different. There shouldn't be an expectation out of anybody for him to, now you may have to, okay, we all got to do this the same way in terms of the end product. And I know that you all don't think or operate the same way, but for a moment you might have to kind of take a look at this and figure out how you can adapt to getting the blanks filled in here on this piece of paper the same way or whatever, with whatever information. But the recognition that for the most part, yeah, this may not be your way of doing it, but for the moment, we have to satisfy this because this is what we're working on. This is what you get paid for, so on and so forth. But the recognition that that may not be their way, but you may have to make a momentary adaptation. But the fact that everybody is different is important. It's really important because when you can factor that in, then you've made room for everybody to be who they are. And you don't have to do battle with them. You just have to work with understanding that and doing whatever. Makes a big, big difference. But and it makes a difference in families sometimes, because if the parents have a clue of who their kids are, then they don't expect mini-me's, and they where their own squares square up with the child, they don't have to do that battle. They can just understand, okay, well, I do it this way, but she's going to do it that way. So I need to make room for her to be who she is, or whatever, families, and that works. There's expectations that, oh, I'm going to do this, and well, no, it's not going to work for that one. So you might plan on doing things differently in that regard for this one, because they're not going to accept it. And then you're going to have battles. So don't bother to do the battles, because you ain't going to win anyway. That is the important thing to understand. I understood it with my kids early. They're younger than I am. They are going to have more energy than me, and they're going to beat you out in the end anyway. So you might as well not, you might as well start accommodating who they are early on, because you're not going to win in the long run with them. That's just the way life is designed here. So you work with and accommodate. The other thing is, when that level of interaction and exchange between two people, and I'll go back to your kindness for a moment and talk about saying hi, that's what's meant to happen on this planet, because that's the union of spirit and matter that is the interaction and basis of every bit of consciousness we create. And you're creating consciousness when you're interacting with another person here. That's what the planet's meant to do. It's meant to have that interaction all over the place. And that's what this planet is doing. Is the whole number 2 system is the creation of consciousness from the bottom all the way to the top. I mean, it's come down, now it's got to go back up. So if you want this planet to be dysfunctional, if you want to try to stop time, you try to create dissension between all different kinds of people, so they are at battle with each other instead of creating something constructive. And there goes your health at the same time, because the etheric bodies of all these people cannot function and have the flow it's meant to have.
Right. There's definitely not any of that going on these days.
Right. Okay. But yeah, out there, I mean, they understand this game plan, and they understand how to design an alternative. Yeah. So I would
I
ask
thought it
Don.
was, I thought it was great one time, you had said, God has a plan, or, there's people going around saying, God has a plan for you. God has a
Oh,
plan
yeah.
for you, and then it's
I
like,
think-
oh, here it is.
Here it is. I mean, I hear that in religious circles sometimes, there's, I don't know if it's specific churches or whether it's in the Bible written or whatever. I never super studied the Bible, but every once in a while, or I'll hear some evangelist on TV or something saying God has a plan for you, and I say, yeah, it's right here. This is it, and it has a purpose.
Why don't you give me a call?
Yeah, but it is, because there is the plan, and like I said, in the little front piece that's on the website, and this plan, this whole system isn't wasteful. It's how did I put it? Sometimes I get better words than others. It's not capricious, it's not wasteful. They design it and they give you the manual to help you work it, to become consciously aware of it, so that they got a better chance of accomplishing the goal. Because like DK will say, if you've really gone off track of wherever the objective was for this lifetime, this is when the soul will send down a little point into the etheric of agitation, to which can just be a small agitation, or it can be an illness or something serious, to pull you off of whatever off track you're on, to try to get you back on track. And that is a certain amount of illness. And I've seen some of those sometimes, with a chart where they get themselves into a situation they cannot get out of because they can't do it. They personally can't do it, or they don't have the heart to do it, or they don't have the ego to do it, or they don't want to look embarrassed, whatever it is. And so they end up making themselves sick to a point where they can no longer live the life pattern they're living that got them off track, so they can get back on track. So better to do this and not have to go through the physical illness. And then, and that's on an individual case, but then on your collective case is you're going to end up being healthier if you're open and can have exchanges with other human beings that are constructive, because that builds health for everybody, because it pulls more good into the world and releases it. And when it does, it's not dead energy or anything like that. It's real. It's that vital. It's always pulling a little bit from above wherever you are. That's where the good is. And you bring it down and you fill the world up with it. That would be, and the other point is implied in this is that there are no unintended births from the viewpoint of the soul. In other words, the soul has to indicate it's time to incarnate according to all of the DK material and the metaphysical material. So you have been ordered, an order was put in for you. The soul says they need to have an incarnation. And so it might be an accident to the people who birth you here, or a surprise, or appear to be unintended. But as far as the planet is, you were ordered and you were delivered. Okay. So for a lot of people, they have a feeling, they're really uncomfortable here, or they don't belong here, or they're not wanted here. And fundamentally, that is not true. But it might be that your parents are surprised when you showed up, or something like that. But it should be understood, even the adopted children or whatever, that, hey, they are wanted. They did not get here by accident. That they have a purpose being on this planet during this period of time. And that might be a biggie when that really becomes understood for a number of people. Because they may think they're already behind the 8 ball by the time they figure they're, realize where they came from, or that they were adopted, or this or that. So, and by the time you're 30, after that first Saturn cycle, you should be realizing that your real allegiance is to your sovereign being, if you will, that monadic energy, or to this planet. They're all one and the same in different gradient measures. And that you can have all the respect and love for the parents who brought you in, and not have to forget them, but you do need to understand that your real commitment here is to that being, that life source, that monadic, that's you need to recognize that. So, and it doesn't make it any less important for your parents, if you have them, if they're still alive or whatever. So.
Yeah.
We got 15 more minutes. Yeah, because there's, what have we got? Some people out there now saying, classifying a number of people as mouths to feed or something to that effect. I don't know exactly what it is. Useless
eaters.
Yeah, something like that. So more than anything else, we maybe should just look at the way we handle the people who are born here, and the care and attention and education and whatever else.
I felt gross even saying that. That's just terrible.
But it's but they're classifying that because I think they have some pretty big agendas planned for that. When we just have to handle how we interact, and we have respect for humanity. But that's been said 1,000 times. That's nothing new, what I just said, as far as what we should be doing to better care for everything. But and because we were talking about symbols the other day, and that was one of the things in Page Glamour. It was talking about symbols are the outer and visible forms of the inner spiritual reality. So as
we lost you, Carla. Huh?
I thought it was me again.
All right.
Check it back.
and I'm just relating as humanity evolves.
We
And because-
lost you there for a second. You had frozen up on us.
Oh, okay. So where did you lose me?
At the beginning of that, actually, I think you had just started saying something.
Symbols.
Yes, symbols. Yeah.
Symbols are the outer visible forms of the inner spiritual realities. So what I'm saying as an astrologer, I mean, all of that stuff is symbols. The signs represent information. The symbols for the planets represent information. So, but they are the visible forms of inner spiritual reality. So that's what we're dealing with when we learn to read the symbols on a chart. When we see all those are the inner spiritual realities that you guys are living and embodying and expressing in terms of your chart. But and so that statement was in Glamour for starters. But that that's why when you read a chart, it can be accurate, is because it's just reading the inner spiritual reality that that symbol represents.
Is that something that you can, that we can talk about at some point? Or is that more of
Sure,
an esoteric teaching?
No, I do not do is, for example, I do not do esoteric astrology, which
Okay.
is a totally different level. I do exoteric because that's where most people live on a day-to-day basis, that they can see and identify with, and makes the most impact for most of us at this point. Let's see where else. Also making a point, you know, when you get born into a family, you may not feel you fit into that family. Because we talked about how your, you know, the family structure, for example, and the interaction with people, it changes. And you're not meant to really feel comfortable for long, because you're pushed to grow. Tom smiles at that one.
Coercion.
Yeah, you had said once, you know, I think you had said to me, you know, your parents create the opposition in a lot of ways for your growth. And then at some point you're supposed to move on from that.
Yeah.
Right. And you had ages even, I think.
Yeah, you're gonna push. Yeah, the Uranus cycle, it's 7 degrees in a sign, or 7 years in a sign. So you're born, and by 7 you're going to school, which is a push. That's a break right there. You know, because you now go to school, you learn to read and write, so you learned how to function outside the realm of the family unit. I'm going back traditionally a little bit. We obviously get out there a lot earlier now. So anyway, it's and then at 14, there's another push for freedom, Uranus. 21, that's where we really get the break. That's where the world used to recognize you as an adult at 21. Certain number of things now, they moved to 18, but pretty much 21, a lot of people are out of college even, you know, and first time out on their own, where they aren't living at home, or they aren't living in a dorm. So I do have a note on these transits. You know, we are consciousness creating machines. You really have to get into physics of consciousness to really understand that, but we are. So, and the substance is parsed out. I'm talking about transits. Literally the substance that comes to us is parsed out in timely manner for our own agenda, but they are the new ingredients that get added every so often when the transit comes. It's like new ingredients for you to work with. And you work that into your consciousness and processes. So
Yeah, it gets stirred up, and then in the cauldron, and the magic happens.
yeah, those are your words, not mine. You try to say I said that.
I got you on that one. That was funny.
That's just like you putting me in a coal miner's
Right, right. Yeah.
whatever, or whatever
Yeah.
that was. I mean, those are just words I don't use. So when you try to tell me I said it, I know better.
I'm going, dang, I'm pretty smart though. That's good. Those are good ones.
All right. Now, another reason you don't go with charts as much with the young people is because, like, my grandson, who's well, he'll be a senior in high school now, but I think back a couple years because he wanted to know a little more about his chart. And like his mother, he has 4 planets that are in direct square with each other. It's called a grand square. It's in his chart. He has to satisfy all 4 of those points to have any degree of peace within himself. Okay. So, and I said something to him about the chart or whatever, and that he has this, and he says, thanks, Grandma. You know, like I'm giving him a bad rap or something. But I explained to him because, first of all, he's got a lot of science in his head. Like his mother says, he was born with a lot of this information. It was just there, and very young. I mean, 3-4 years old. He can figure all this stuff out. And so I said to him, I said, you know, I think it was Edison who did the light bulb, did 1,000 experiments before he got the filament and the light bulb the way he wanted it. And I said, so you got to understand, you've got those 4 points in your chart because you need them. Because, and they're in fixed signs besides that. So if you're ever going to do anything that would require something like that, you have to have the drive and the patience and the understanding and the need to keep pushing. Okay. So yes, you have 4, they don't get along. So it's going to be pushing in you because you're not going to be satisfied until you get something a certain way, period. And so, and I think that's important to understand is this chart design and everything that's in it for an individual is because they need it. But you give them information too young, they don't have that perspective. And then it's thanks, Grandma. You know, you dished me up with this stuff. Because everybody expects they're perfect. They all expect when they get their chart and they're young, well, there's no bad stuff for me, no rough times coming for me. It's like everybody else. I am perfect. The rest of the world is the problem. You know, that's your first assessment of the world anyway. And so that's another reason for them not, unless you've really got somebody who can explain it in a really positive perspective that they can understand. Giving them that information too early is, you know, they think they're doomed. So anyway, trying to see if there's any other notes here. Probably not. Oh, when I do teach about there's no bad signs, and I have to point out usually 1 or 2, and I have a note here that Virgo is rather diligent in helping others perfect themselves first. The Virgo in one's chart is meant to help you discriminate and perfect yourself. It's the last sign of the bottom half, which is the individual portion. The top half is where you go out and meet the world and other people. So the Virgo comes along and says, oh, all right, well, we've done all these basics here. Now we're going to have to perfect and clean up this act. That's what Virgo is there for, and be able to discriminate about what you should do and shouldn't do. Well, people are bestowed with Virgos. Lots of people have them, but their inclination, first of all, is to go fix everybody else first. I had a lady who had 4 planets over in the house of other people. And she said, for a long time, I figured if I could just fix all those people, then my life would be perfect. Okay. Rather than fixing herself, which she eventually learned that was not the thought pattern. But Virgos are very liberal with their conversation about how to do things and how people should be doing things. And they make great bookkeepers when you're looking for the last penny, because they aren't going to give up till they find it if the books don't match. all right, and detail and so on and so forth. But there are no bad signs. They do all have their purpose and their function. But some are more in harmony than others. I had, a lot of times now they're scheduling births by cesarean, so they get a chance to schedule when to have them. And because my daughter had contacted me about her youngest son, because that child was going to occur that way. And so he had a 2-week pattern, 2-week option. She said, what would be the better choices? So I'm looking to see what matches best with the family. And then I had a daughter-in-law with my son who they had to choose the same timing. And she had just gone in and was going to take the first day. And but my son, who follows this pretty well, said, well, why don't we take a look? And I could see that a couple days later would have made a better fit with the family than the day that had been the first option. And she is a Leo. And so this child was going to have the moon. The moon is the one that moves every 55 hours, was going to be in Scorpio. And she doesn't believe in astrology. Okay. But I said, well, you got a moon in Scorpio if you choose this day, and you got a moon in Sagittarius if you wait 2 days. And I said, do you know any Scorpios? She's a Leo, and she's really a Leo. Yeah, I do. And I don't get along with them very well. What is that other day? And they did choose 2 days later. And it fit in with the whole family in terms of that moon. Otherwise, she was gonna, and she has no tolerance for moody people and grumpy people. And she would have had a real emotional problem here that just wouldn't have fit her well. So she did wait and had that child, and kid gets along with everybody. There's only so much you can change, because there's only very few planets that move quickly enough that 2 weeks would matter. But you can look at those if you have to. I don't normally have never really thought that's the thing to do, but in today's world now, where they're scheduling everything, it's making a lot of, because those doctors like to get in and out of the hospital, so they schedule early. They schedule them early first. So a lot of these kids have 12th house suns, which would probably not normally happen. And that means that their core values, their expression, that sun that shines, is stuck in the house of Neptune. And they never fully can feel they can express their ego and their core values. And there's a bunch of those out there now, just because they're the first appointment in the morning. Yeah. So, anyway.
Would there be a way? So this is kind of a personal question here, because my daughter, she was a planned cesarean, born the day before the 28th of April. Like, is there a way to kind of make sure they're on the right path, so to speak?
In which way do you mean on the right path?
Does it really know how to ask it? Or let me put it this way. Does it necessarily mean they're on the wrong path? Because
no.
Because I mean, it could be, maybe that's just the way it was supposed to happen.
But they're in range. First of all, you got to understand they're in range. Right. They're generally within 2 weeks of the delivery pattern for starters.
Right. Okay. She was definitely full term. So.
Yeah. And so what I have seen is, I mean, and in this case, his wife was just taking the first day option.
Gotcha.
Okay, well, let me do it the first day of the week because I've got 2 weeks off. Okay, kind of
Oh
thing.
my gosh.
What's that, Donnie?
This is when I want to start maternity leave. Like, how self-absorbed
Well,
are we?
Well, it's practical
It
because
is-
she's
it is.
because she can be home with the baby.
Right.
Okay,
right.
and fit it in. But this worked out a little better. Well, oh yeah, I was. So my son, who does, you know, follows astrology, and the sun sign was 1 day off. It would have shifted if they had waited even one more day. And he's saying, can't you just cross your legs and hold them tight for one more day? You know, he was not a winner in that relationship. When she's telling him, you know, he's suggesting that she wait even one more day. And frankly, this child probably was due to be born about exactly the time it was born. I just chose that. And the same thing happened with my daughter's child. Because the date I chose, and I had chose it maybe a month in advance or something, I think she was coming really close to having some of her contractions. Because I think I got it very close because I'm pairing it up with the kids anyway. And the kids and the parents, you always have conjunctions with them. You wouldn't even get that kid born at that time if there was not some conjunctions between your planets and theirs where they come together. Okay. So, and in the case of my grandson with my daughter, where he had that 2-week period, and that child was getting ready to be born no matter what.
Yeah. So you just put me at ease there because that was with my daughter. It was, yeah, my wife was getting the contractions.
Yeah.
And I want to say we even ended up like we had the planned day and time, but we ended up, hey, let's just roll in a little bit early just in case because she was getting the contractions. And so
Yeah.
I think she was coming whether it was going to be a forced extraction or not.
Right. Yeah. But so the only thing I'm saying is, you know, there's a lot of people out there who do now have them scheduled. They have a 2-week range. But more than anything, I was looking at just the time when they're born, because they may have come, you know, later in the day, but that doctor wants to be in and out of the hospital and clear his day so he can go play on the golf course or something, is what they always say. I'm sure they do other things. But it puts a certain, but they've certainly got some degree of sensitivity or a spiritual bent with those suns in the 12th house. But anyway, but no, they're mostly, I think they're pretty much right on, but it doesn't hurt if you have somebody who gets along well with the family. You know, in this case, they had a lot of fire signs in the family, period. And so this child with a moon in Scorpio, that's water, you put it on fire, what do you got? Steam. And the pairing of that would have really made a moody kid. And in that family, I know a moody kid would mom would not have liked that. She has no tolerance for that. And the way it is, they all get along really well. So, but I'm not out there suggesting people do that. Period. Because we always used to figure you let it fall, but now they're not. I mean, they're scheduling them. So if you got to make a choice. So, are we, yeah, we're done. Why don't you turn off the recording? We're done. And then